Two of the winningest programs in college football going at it.
That's what I love. I mean, Michigan, Notre Dame love to talk about being two of the winningest programs in NCAA history.
That's true.
That's like the British Empire saying they have the winningest naval program in world history. That may have been true in the 18th and 19th century, but Guy, it's the 21st century. It's time to step up and smell the roses and what's going on today.
Obviously was not impressed by those that little video scoreboard in the south end zone. It reminds me of a 13-inch TV set in your kitchen counter. I mean, come on.
So
we're going to see what happens in Ann Arbor next week.
As I'm reading what you're saying, size does matter for you.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Size does matter.
Because, you know, with my background, I've taken a number of psychology courses, and the one thing I found was the more someone emphasizes one thing, they're really making up for a deficiency somewhere else. So, I mean, I hear you constantly saying the big house. You're always talking about your jumbotrons.
Where do you see those
What's the inadequacy, Tom? But I got a question for you. We have a common opponent, Notre Dame, over the next 2 weeks. We have someone familiar to our viewing audience coaching Notre Dame. I want to get your thoughts on Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly.
Well, I mean, he has been one of those guys who's moved around Grand Valley State and done very well. But then I guess the issue is he just grabbing someone else's recruit, someone else's finished product, taking that to another level, and then moving on.
Well, let me comment on that, because I heard Brian Kelly interviewed a number of times when he was at Cincinnati. And the thing that bothered me most when I heard those interviews, Brian Kelly gave the impression that the cupboard was bare when he walked into Cincinnati and that he did this unbelievable turnaround job. The truth of the matter was Cincinnati was 7-5, had just beaten an undefeated Rutgers who was having a hell of a season, and D'Antonio had left the cupboard stacked in terms of players on the field. And evidence of that was 2 years later in the Orange Bowl, with a senior-laden Cincinnati team, they went into the Orange Bowl undefeated. Those were all Mark D'Antonio's recruits.
Well, to find out what kind of credit Mark D'Antonio gets in 2011, Michigan State obviously is what we're focused on here. First game against Youngstown State, and once again, not very impressive at all. I do know this, though, in Michigan State, and I have a lot of confidence in that fact that the Spartans are much like the Iowa Hawkeyes. When expectations are high, they fall on their face. Now, that's really early on. We only have one game in here, but to see how the Spartans take on this schedule after they get by another cupcake next week in FAU, then they finally go to Notre Dame, then you got the Ohio States, you got Michigan, you got Wisconsin upcoming, Penn State. You're going to find out quite a bit about Michigan State. I
think we already have found out a lot about Michigan State, and I think you need to look at the body of work since Mark D'Antonio came in as coach.
The 49-7 whipping by Alabama?
No, I'm saying if you look at the whole body of work, it's not the same old Spartans. And in fact, he has taken that little tagline and blown it up. Yes, in the past, people would get overhyped on expectations going into a season, even going into an important game. But I think D'Antonio has been even keel in his handling of that team. And I think when their moment comes at key points in games, they're not looking to not lose. They're looking to win the ball game. And we've got a lot of examples over the last 4+ years of how he's been able to change that perception of quote-unquote same old Spartans.
I don't like night games. Because as Bo Schembechler used to say, for games 1 o'clock, that's where we should play football games. 1 o'clock, the players got to hang around in the hotel. They get up at 9 o'clock. They have meetings. They got to keep their concentration level going. It's tough for them. I'd rather have them play it now.
Let me ask you this: what's your stance on horseless carriages? Tom, hey Tom, I came across a very interesting piece of information last week. It was a listing of the 10 most sexually active cities in America. And sitting there at number 3, you'd never imagine, being an
Let me
alumni.
guess. Ann Arbor, Michigan?
Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now, Tom, you went to the University of Michigan.
Yes, I did.
Is that surprising that Ann Arbor, Michigan would end up on the top 10 of the most sexually active cities in America? I know that certainly wasn't the case for you personally.
Well, it's very surprising. It's actually shocking, to be honest with you. But anyway, explain the data. I mean, how did that happen?
It's shocking at face value, but when you go and you dig a little deeper, you find out what really is why they appeared so high on the list. And according to online bookseller Amazon.com, they calculated the types of books that are sold across the country and found that sex books accounted for 24% of all books sold on Amazon.com in Ann Arbor.
Sometimes you need that owner's manual.
Well, little known fact, according to consumer giant Procter & Gamble, Ann Arbor leads the country in the sales of hand lotion and
So what is your
bedside.
point of this? What does this
Kleenex.
have to do with Spartans and Wolverine? Let's get away from all that social stuff.
You are where you come from. And quite frankly, there's a whole bunch of lonely bookworms at the University of Michigan.
Now, don't stereotype.
And it takes the term self-indulgent to a whole new level when you look at a survey such as this.
Not getting way ahead, but October 15th, really excited about that opportunity for the Wolverines coming into Spartan Stadium. Not sure when that game's going to be kicking off, but hopefully it's a 3:30 game to build the hype and everything. And that game, when you look at the Big Ten, I mean, that could be as relevant a game because Michigan's kind of hiding in the weeds right now. Not a lot of people talking about them on the Big Ten Network, for example. They're talking about Nebraska, talking about Michigan State, even still talking about Ohio State right now.
Well, I'll tell you, Tom, that October 15th game scares the hell out of me because it is a classic sandwich game. I mean, if you look, if you look at our schedule and you look at the strength of schedule in October.
Sandwich game.
Michigan could sneak up on us if we're not careful.
Yeah, okay. So very good. You're going to find out this week against the Irish. Going down, all the Michigan State fans all weekend long, so frustrated with the fact that hated Michigan beat Notre Dame, is now thinking, I'm thinking that for a second here, if Notre Dame is that bad, those two teams were so bad on Saturday night, I would expect Michigan State to at least crush Notre Dame by 21, or basically they suck.
Well, first of all, the early line is Notre Dame's favored, which is a joke.
Favored?
A joke.
How can that happen if Notre Dame is so bad?
Well, it's not going to happen. It's the biggest stone lock of the week. Michigan State covering, and it's going to be ugly.
The situation with Greg Madison, he's bringing it strong, and that's what I like about this Michigan defense. This is not a really good Michigan team, I'll admit right now. It's going to take a while for them to evolve. But I'm telling you what, once with Greg Madison, Al Borges, the two coordinators under Brady Hoke, I think the future's looking bright, particularly with that third best rivals team, and as far as recruiting in 2012.
And I had a great storyline going.
You were hitting it too.
When the game ends and calling it early, and if I had that choice, I'd end it early. And I talked about the triple overtime game down in Ann Arbor. Game was 2004, not 2006. Would not have been 6 in a row, no matter what. So I'm sorry.
All right. Yes.
I don't want the truth to get in the way of a good story.
Yeah. Oh, let me state up front, I'm obsessed with Michigan State. I always have been. Since I was 5 years old, I want them to lose every game. I'm just going to be clean with you and tell you that's the truth. What I can't stand is Michigan State people pretending they don't like, or that they're focused on Michigan or obsessed with Michigan when they truly are. Because I can't tell you how many of the Red Cedar message board was totally dominated, people so frustrated with the fact that Notre Dame lost that game to Michigan. Well, why would they like Notre Dame so much?
There's a difference, Tom, between being obsessed and pure hatred. And quite frankly, I hate the University of Michigan.
Really?
Always have.
Hatred, that's a pretty strong term. For a grown-up like you, that's a pretty strong term.
I'm not proud of it. It's one of those things that, all things being, equal. I would prefer I didn't, but I do. No apologies here.
This is Michigan. The state of Michigan's team is the University of Michigan.
That is not true. That's absolutely not true. There's only one county in the state of Michigan. No, excuse me, two. Washtenaw County and Oakland, where there's more U of M grads than Michigan State.
I'm talking about the true fashion of the lion's share of fans, and this is a Michigan State. Always has been, always will.
Well, let's get into the Subway alumni.
Well, let's
or
get, you know,
as we call them, the Walmart Wolverines. Well, it's interesting you bring up how well-behaved the crowd was, Tom, because according to David Hawkins, who's a member of the U of M campus police, there was some incidents at the concourse at the game. Apparently, according to David Hawkins, Dad was a little drunk and the teens with the teens, and he started swinging on them. This happens fairly often with later starts, but it's a very isolated incident. Well, first of all, with most of the Walmart Wolverines, it doesn't happen infrequently. It basically is Saturday night at the mobile home. I will say this, the most well-behaved crowd that I saw at the University of Michigan, in my experience, was last year at the 5-minute mark of the fourth quarter, when Michigan decided to punt, and there was a very orderly transition of U of M fans from their seats, out the door, out of the stadium, out of the city. They didn't want anything to do with it.
I got to tip my hat to my partner, Ted Fox, right out of the chute, because last week, for those of you who watched the show, he predicted a laugher in South Bend today, or this past Saturday, rather. And indeed, it was a laugher. I'm still laughing.
Yeah, well, it was one of those good news, bad news. As I predicted, it was a laugher. That's the good news. The bad news is our first segment of what I meant to say was that it was going to be a laugher in terms of Notre Dame, not Michigan State. And unfortunately, the outcome of that game was not as I originally did.
Yeah, see, Ted defined a laugher.
Well, welcome back to the Michigan Love Fest and their self-proclaimed national championships and Big Ten championships. Well, this is interesting, Tom, because I came across this, and I actually came across this from the MGO Blue webpage. It is the all-time scores for the University of Michigan. And there is a series in the early 1900s, from 1901 to 1904, where you proclaimed to be national champions. And one of your, 4 of your so-called 11 national championships. First of all, let's go through that and break it down a little bit, can we?
No. What a waste of time.
In 1901, you had 2 away games. One was in Detroit, and one was in Chicago. By the way, you proclaimed yourself to be conference champions with a 4-0 record. So obviously that can't be the Big Ten. Was that the Big Four? I wasn't really familiar with that. And did you know, by the way, that early on in the 1900s that a team had to advance 5 yards in 3 downs for a first down? So you got to throw out all those
Well, the fact that you went
so-called championships.
The fact that you did that research tells me you need to get a life. But let me ask you something about Michigan State's national championship.
it's bursting the bubble of self-proclaimed champions.
1960, all this stuff.
Okay, Tom. Now let's go on to 1903. You one of your many Big Ten championships that you proclaimed. You
I think
won.
it was like 49.
You won the conference with a 3-0 record. Okay.
What are you, Perry Mason here?
Yeah. In 1904, you had a stellar 2-0 record for another championship. It's a joke.
How about Big Ten champion?
It's one thing, the accomplishments. It's another thing, self-proclaiming yourself as a national champion. When you don't play any road games, you know, it's kind of nice to get out every once in a while, smell the roses, so to speak. How can you go through an 11-game season and have 2 away games and not have.
They weren't playing 11
decided-
games back then.
They were. In 1901, you had an 11-0 record. 1902, you had an 11-0 record.
They
You
went
were
to the
playing.
Rose Bowl. Yeah.
You were beating.
10.
You were beating your son's college like a drum.
Albion. Yes.
Albion. They were their personal
The Brits.
whipping boy. 18-0 against Albion.
Just don't stew in something, Ted, that's 110 years old in
I'm
lore.
not stewing in it.
Yeah,
You're
you
stewing
are.
in
It's
every-
bothering you.
You are stewing in it every home game when you prance that thing out before the team comes out about all your national championships. And by the way, let's be straight. There are no national champions until the acknowledged polls, which is in the mid-40s. So you got 2, we've got 2.
Because I saw something in Michigan Stadium this past Saturday. The Spartan Stadium should take on, should change their situation with your seat backs. You pricey people in Section 24, get the thick pad that they have at Michigan Stadium with not the back support thing, because that clutters up the aisles too much. You need to go down there and do it right.
Tom, there's a reason why they call it a seat back.
Because
the seat
you just want
has
to make
a
your
back.
buns soft, and also the scoreboard.
Believe me, of the 110,000 people in that stadium, they all have soft buns, okay?
Not true. Not true at all.